Welcome back to Bash is Magic. No, it's not. An introduction to the command line for macOS and Linux. Here in part 10, we're going to look at the logic we can put inside of our Bash scripts and a few examples of how to do that. Specifically, we're going to look at variables, if statements, and loops, and then just point to a couple examples you can tear apart on your own to figure out how all of that works. So here we are back at our terminal and our favorite little folder we're using for this project. And you can see I've added some new .sh files. And as we learned last time, those are in fact shell scripts, most probably. So let's go ahead and look at dad joke first. Let's just go ahead and run it. And dad joke does pretty much what you'd expect. It tells a dad joke. And how does it do this? Well, surprisingly, it's only 2 lines long. And if we just cat it out to the screen, that's all it does. It runs a curl and it prints automatically the result of that curl to the standard output, in this case, our terminal, and there we go, we get it on the screen. Let's go ahead and open this up with an editor. I'm going to use VI for this. You can use whatever you want at home if you're playing along. And instead of just returning it to standard out or piping it somewhere or redirecting it like we had done in the past in other videos, we can simply declare a new variable. I'm going to declare one called joke. And if we ran this, it would fail because we're setting joke to curl. What we need to do is tell Bash that we want it to run a command and push the output of that command into this variable. So to do that, we're going to surround our command curl with a $sign and parentheses. Let's close that parentheses. And unlike other languages, we don't need a semicolon or any demarcation that we're done with a line. We just put a new line and move on to the next thing. All we're going to do here is just echo out that variable. Now, I could just type $joke, and it looks familiar to PHP at that point. I'm making my variables all capital letters because, well, it's easy to read. In a complex program, the capital letters just kind of stand out, and I know that's where my variables are. There's no hard rule to that. You can use whatever casing you like. However, we do need that $sign, and we're just gonna, we don't need it the first time we declare the variable, we need it every time we reference the variable. Now, this will work as is, but it's best practice to put and just get in the habit of putting a curly brace around the variable name. This will run, like I say, if we didn't put those braces around, because this is a very simple statement, all Bash has to evaluate is one thing, and it can do that pretty well. However, once we start putting variables inside of other statements, inside of strings, making complex things, well, Bash can get confused of what we mean and what we're trying to invoke. So if we put those curly braces around, Bash is always clear, we're trying to declare this variable here. So it's just, again, good practice to get in the habit of always putting curly braces around what we're trying to invoke. So let's go ahead and run this. Let's clear my screen real quick before we do. And then run it. There we go. It's a good little dad joke. But hey, there's some additional stuff on the screen we didn't see before. Well, that's because when we're invoking curl this time, there is some additional dialogue that curl generally creates. When we ran it the first time, because of how we were invoking it, that didn't go anywhere. It simply kind of just vanished out into space. It was still produced, but it didn't get displayed anywhere. All that was displayed was the result of that curl. This time, since we're running a command inside of an executable statement like that, we're actually seeing the output. That might be a little confusing or a little concerning. The good news is that we can very easily fix that by just going and editing your program again. And this time we're going to put -s. Oop, helps if I type the I first, and then -s. And we'll right quit that. And now when we quit that, and now when we run it, yes, we have silenced those messages, those log messages that the command produced. So that's variables. We can just declare variables as specific things, which we'll see in a second, or we can, have executables run and put the result of that execution into a variable. All right, so All right, so next up, we're going to look at an example that will introduce two new concepts. One will be the if statement, and the second thing will be how to pass variables into a program. So the very first part of that is the if statement, and let's go ahead and look at our example. Example input.sh is where I've set this up. So let's just go ahead and run that real quick. Example input.sh. Please give me your name, and I am Dwayne. And there it says, hello, Dwayne. So let's go ahead and take a look at the program. Let's just go ahead and edit it. We'll go into VI and see, well, it's not that long, but there's some complex stuff going on here. So this is a Ben bash statement. There's my shebang. And if a name is not provided, ask for one. That's just a comment to let me know what's going on as a human. And then we start this if statement. So the if structure is pretty straightforward. I'm just going to type it down here. If the statement we're going to evaluate, if that's true, then do this command. Else, do this command. And then we're going to end the statement with an FI. That is the basic structure of an if-then statement inside of Bash. So the spacing, the tabs here doesn't really matter. Bash is going to interpret it with two spaces or with tabs. Doesn't really care. And you see, we've introduced the concept of a logic symbol right there of the semicolon, saying if this is true, then do this, else do this. So pretty straightforward. If you're familiar with other programming language, this is a simplified version of the if-then statement, if anything. Now, the logic I have specifically in here might be a little confusing. When you first fire up a program, you can assign numbered variables on to etc. And those will be expected inputs. That's just something Bash does. So here I'm saying if I don't have an input already defined, let's echo out this string, please give me your name, and open up a read. Read will let me type something on the terminal and it will pass that, it will literally read whatever I typed into a variable called input name. But if this is false, meaning I have supplied a name, if I have supplied a string here, well, let's just go ahead and assign whatever string to input name, and then we'll finish that if statement. And then I'm echoing out the word hello, and then whatever I put in as my input name. So let's go ahead and run this again. I'm going to go ahead and delete the statements down here. Now let's run this again. And then I'm just going to go ahead and supply my name right here. And there it says, hello, Dwayne, as expected. So let's go back and look at the program one more time. I'll just cat it out this time. And that's an if statement. If, then, else, phi, for finished statement. All right, moving on. So let's clear out our screen. And then let's look at loop statements. So for that, I have been a little thing called looper. And we're going to run looper real quick, and it counts to 4. And that's what it's supposed to do. So if we just cat looper real quick and just look at the logic here, there's my Ben bash, and then my comment, scripts counts to 4. So I'm declaring a variable here called I, and I, again, as declaring a variable, I don't need to put the $sign in front. If I put the $sign in front like I would with PHP, will throw an error. It won't know what to do with that because it's referencing something that's been defined somewhere. Here, we're literally assigning it. And notice there's no space here. We're simply saying, hey, we're passing in literally the string 0. And string 0, well, that equals 0. Now we're saying while, and we're evaluating a statement again. Square brackets tend to mean evaluations in Bash. So while we're evaluating the statement, do, literally, this thing until we're done. So again, very simple syntax with this. While, do, done. So while I is literally less than LT, for do I equals, and this might be a little confusing when you first look at it. There are a couple different ways we could have accomplished this, but we're saying literally execute this self-referential little piece of math here and assign it to the variable I. Now there are some other syntaxes we could have used to get this to increment up. In this case, all I wanted to do was increment the I, and then we're just going to echo that I back out. And then we're done. And yes, I didn't use our curly brackets here, but it's all right. It's a simple program. It didn't get too confused, and it just ran. So there's a lot of example applications out there that you can look up. Tons of scripts out on GitHub. In fact, if you just go over to my GitHub, mcdwayne.com, I'm sorry, github.com/mcdwayne. If you do go to mcdwayne.com, it will give you a link over to this page. Um, you can see some of the example scripts that I've left up here. Vegan.sh is just a very simple script that does composer and npm installs on arguments that you pass in. Post-it now is a utility I built to post markdown files from point A to point B being my production implementation of WordPress, and testing things along the way using a couple tools that I might talk about in a future video. But you can go in and look at anything marked shell, and that will give you some great jumping off points. And there are thousands and thousands, at this point, probably millions more examples you can look at. Stack Overflow is a great example of finding little short snippets. In fact, this exact line of our bit of code I did pull from a post on Stack Overflow when I was doing research for this video. So there are tons and tons of resources out there to help you. Hopefully this will get you going in the right direction, and that was all it was meant to do. So know you can have variables, you can use if statements, and you can loop things inside of Bash. So start playing with that, have some fun, write some example apps, and as long as you're having fun, you're doing it right. So if you come back for the next part, the next part's going to be a little different. It's just going to be a bunch of random tips and tricks, and that will help you with productivity. You might have noticed I wasn't typing everything fully there, and things started magically appearing, and I used the up keys and tab completion. We'll talk about all that next time. See you.